Morning, everyone. Apologies for being a couple of minutes late. We're just having the expected technical glitch with the two people who should be the least likely to suffer a technical glitch of all the rounds that we've done. And I also apologize for my terrible backlighting here. I'm not in my usual spot, and this office has both terrible lighting and also terrible internet. So I apologize if I also sound like a Cylon Raider. So we'll wait for a minute or two for others to join, and we're just getting Dr. Chan on, who should be on in a second. Just give her a minute. We've got 47 people on, so we give her 1 second to join. Oh, okay. She says she's watching me. Allow to talk. More. Teresa Chan. More. Promote to panelist. Okay. There she is. Just give her 1 second to rejoin.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, wow. There we go.
I the front of host link instead of the back of host link, but that's okay.
We'll get started. Good morning, everybody. Mark Crowther, Chair of the Department of Medicine. I think everybody knows who I am. Today's is Medical Grand Rounds. This is our usual first Thursday of the month, Medical Grand Rounds. Again, I apologize for my internet connection. I'm in my the swing office at St. Joe's, and it has terrible internet. So if I drop off, I've made Sarah the co-host, so she will pick up the hosting, and I will rejoin. We decided to do something that wasn't COVID related. It was probably a good idea because it sounds like COVID is going to get a little bit more intense over the next couple of weeks, and many of you will have seen my email that I sent out with some resources about that earlier this week. So please take care of yourself, but also make sure that we take care of everybody else. One public service announcement, we sent out an email earlier this week about vaccinators. There's a real shortage of vaccinators and screeners right now. If you have a license to bill in Ontario, and particularly if you have hospital credentials, but even if you don't, please review that email. It was sent out on Monday and sign up. If you're mercenary, it pays extremely well. And if you want to do some public good, we've got a real shortage of vaccinators and really do need more volunteers. So please sign up and do that. I'm doing my first shift at Cops Coliseum, First Ontario Place on Monday, starting at 8 a.m. So if you have a relative who needs to be vaccinated, you probably want to schedule them after 2 p.m. because I haven't done an IM injection in a long time, but by about 10 o'clock, I should be pretty proficient at it. Today's presenters are Dr. Teresa Chan and Sarrah Lall. I think everybody knows Teresa. She's a bit of an internet personality of ours who's an emergency physician, works here in Hamilton, and is an internationally recognized expert in social media. And Sarrah Lall is an assistant professor in our Division of Education and Innovation. She's done an immense amount of work over the last couple of years building a curriculum around commercialization, working with Dr. Kelton's group, and is really establishing herself as an expert in the field of education about commercialization and education. For some reason, there's stuff on top of the windows. I don't know why we've got squares in front of, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Chan and Dr. Lall. Of course, as usual, I'll mute myself and turn my video off. And again, I apologize if I disappear. Hopefully that doesn't disrupt the webinar. Thanks very much. If you do have questions, please put them in the question and answer box. The chat box is open today, but I don't tend to monitor it on a real basis, and we'll lose questions if they go into the chat. So please put them into the question and answer box, not into the chat function. Dr. Chan or Ms. Lall, please go ahead.
All right. Hey, welcome. Hello and good morning, everyone. All right, so we're very excited to be here today. I'm Sarah, and of course, I'm joined by my fabulous colleague, Dr. Teresa Chan, and we're going to be presenting to you on a very interesting topic, we feel, and I hope that you reflect this as well at the end of the session, but 5 easy rituals for you to actually be incorporating social media to amplify your professional life.
All right, so we'll head off into our mandatory conflicts of interest slide. And Sarah, it's showing up a little fuzzy. I don't know if it's fuzzy on your end. It might be fuzzy. Oh, there it's going. It's probably bandwidth issues. That's okay. All right, so I received a honorarium from McMaster University. I also will be speaking about Academic Life of Emergency Medicine, which is an educational startup for which I have worked in creating something called the Faculty Incubator.
Perfect. And I have no social media apps on my phone. And so just keep that in mind as we're going through the presentation. I use social media, however, I do limit it to only my desktop computer or my laptop computer. So let's get started with first thinking about why it's important to build a social media presence as a professional in the first place.
So you got to think about at the very core of it, your why. And so Simon Sinek has a great TED Talk. If you haven't watched it before, then I would highly recommend it. But I think it's about the why, the how, and the what. But if you go to the core of it, the why is going to be the thing that gets you through when you're not sure exactly if you should be tweeting something. It's your core touchstone, and it moves you towards helping you filter things. So I think that you need to know why you're on social media and how does it matter to you, and then what that will help you figure out what you're going to do.
Okay, perfect. So using this framework, we're going to talk first about what you can accomplish, then how you can accomplish it, and finally, how that links to the ultimate why of why you would be even able to accomplish it in the first place. So what do you want to accomplish through social media use? Well, there's lots of things, and we can't guarantee maybe the first one. We can't guarantee that you can definitely get more funding, but you can definitely get more attention. And so through social media use, you can really start to focus in on garnering more attention for the work that you do, which could lead to more funding opportunities, could lead to more networking, more conference, more speaking opportunities, and ultimately greater impact. How do you get there, Teresa?
So you get there by thinking about all the different things that might help you get to that pathway. And so for me, knowledge translation has been a big part of why I get online. I would say that subject matter expertise has been also another reason. In terms of technology transfer, in some of the zones of what I'm doing, it can be an avenue to find new collaborators to do that. It can be in terms of recruiting talent. My current postdoc, he found me from Twitter, so that's interesting. The thought leadership that you can actually precipitate can be something that you can be there for as well. And there are some people who are big thinkers, and social media can be their main platform, for instance.
Perfect. And then why do you ultimately get this in the first place? So not why do you need this, but why would you be able to get this? And the reason there is because social media, as part of your identity, is ultimately linked to the building of reputation. And this is not just your reputation, but is also the institutions, the organizations that you're affiliated with, the societies that you're affiliated with. And so there's a benefit to working collectively to build our local presence, our national presence, and our global presence as individual professionals, but ultimately also tying that to the institutions that we belong to, as these are synergistically linked. And by building them up together, we can actually amplify the impact of knowledge translation and everything else underneath that yellow box there to be able to enhance what we're doing.
All right, Sarah, there's a dark gray block that seems to be appearing because of I think it's a Zoom glitch for the webinar module they haven't fixed yet. Okay. So if you can move whatever that is in the bottom right-hand corner, if you can move it up or off of your screen, that would be fantastic. Is that the chat box or something like that? You may just have to close it, unfortunately.
I can't close it.
Okay, can you move it up to the top right-hand corner then, at least? I think we don't have comment. We have content in the bottom. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that'll be the least offensive place probably for it. Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, I think that when you're building content and building your presence online, you can definitely amplify both yourself, but and for instance, your lab or your unit, and it can help build the McMaster institutional reputation.
Okay. Perfect. So everything connects. And so this presentation is really going to be about how those connections exist and how you can amplify the connections for your benefit and for the institution's benefit. All right. So moving on to part two, social media. Sounds easy, right? But lots of challenges that you have to overcome when you're getting onto social media, when you're using it. And so we're going to walk you through a few of those challenges and how to overcome them. So the first challenge that we want to talk about is getting attention on social media and then keeping that attention. Teresa, how was it back in the day?
I actually don't know, because most of the time that I've been faculty, I've had access to social media. But I do remember back in the day that, you know, in the hallowed halls of undergraduate, you'd watch someone on stage and they'd be kind of like a rock star because they had everyone's attention, and we didn't have 17 devices to compete for attention. And my Psych 101 professor had, you know, the Britney Spears microphone, and would do his thing, and he'd have our rapt attention, because most of us didn't even have a laptop at the time.
Right. And now in the reality of today, social media, lots of people online, lots of voices, lots of things, lots of noise in the system, if you will, but lots of competition just to be able to get a little screen time, a little bit of attention from your audience and from others. And so now it's about standing out. And so that's really the challenge with social media. How do you stand out from everyone else that's out there?
I think another challenge is truly about controlling your brand. And I think a lot of people worry that when they get onto social media, the brand runs away from them.
Okay. So in terms of brand, Teresa, if we were to kind of describe ourselves, maybe everyone in the audience can do this exercise, but if you were to describe yourself in 3 words professionally, how would you describe yourself?
Cue the Jeopardy music right now, but I think emergency physician. I would say scholar / researcher interchangeably, right? And specifically within medical education, and educator. I think those would be the 3 things that I want to see.
Okay, awesome. So those are your 3 words, and now we're going to Google. So if you want to Google yourself those 3 words, go ahead. You have official permission to do so. Give you about 5 seconds to do that. Okay.
Right. Well, it's kind of amusing because I did this, and I think for various reasons, and it's awesome because McMaster Experts page is the first one that comes up now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
wow.
It's been elevated. And so whatever they've been doing on the back end to search engine optimize that. And then so it says associate professor at McMaster, she's the assistant dean of faculty development, and it goes on and on and on. And I get to set that bio, which means when people Google me, that is literally, I get to control that right now. And so if you haven't logged into McMaster Experts and optimize your page, you definitely should consider it, because it's like Wiki. It might be the 3rd thing that shows up for people.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. I think for a lot of people, there may be a little bit of a gap, maybe, between what they want their presentation to look like and what it actually is like. So if there is a gap, then you maybe need to address it, right?
Yeah,
and so you do that through building a digital identity.
I will just super say that I probably was that person many years ago, because there's both an ENT surgeon and a family doctor who are more senior than me with my name. So, you know, like I when I searched myself, it was never me when it first came up. People, I would get their emails.
Right. Yeah. I don't have that challenge of having another Sarrah to compete against, but I'm sure that one day someone will pop up and I'll have to kind of see how I can differentiate myself from the other Sarrah. Okay, so 3rd challenge here, knowing when you've tweeted enough. It's a busy place out there in the Twitterverse and the LinkedIn universe. And so knowing that you've done enough on social media is sometimes a little bit tricky.
All right. And so this is a back end screenshot, just so you can see that you can get analytics if you're that kind of person, you like the quant. Then you can actually take a look and see, if you go to analytics.twitter.com, you can enable it and you can see what your top tweet was, what your top mention was, and then some of the engagement metrics. Not everyone's going to have these same numbers, but I just wanted to show that it's possible to get these numbers.
Yeah, and those are pretty big numbers. I mean, not the biggest possible, but they're pretty big numbers. And so I imagine that sometimes for some of us, it's sort of like this when we're looking at our own pages. We don't have a lot of followers. We don't have a lot of attention that we're getting. And so it could make us feel like we're doing too little. And so we're going to talk about that in a little bit during these 5 virtuals that we're going to be discussing. But it's okay. You don't have to have thousands upon thousands, if not millions of followers and retweets every single time you do things. Really, you have to optimize your targets for what you want to be accomplishing. 4th challenge, what is it, Teresa?
I think that sometimes people are worried about this maybe is counterproductive, or, is it possible to count social media as some form of productivity? And I think that's a great question.
Okay, so what counts as productivity? So is it counterproductive? Is it productive? Really, it's all about focusing on specific activities. In academia, we're rewarded for being very productive in terms of publications, in terms of the research that we do, the clinical work that we do, the teaching that we do. And so sometimes it seems like digital interfaces have no place in the workspace, or it seems as though social media may not necessarily fit in. And so we're going to be talking about these rituals again from the perspective of how do you make it part of the productivity exercise as opposed to working against it.
You got
And
it.
the last challenge, ooh, I like this one.
Notification overload. This is real. This is 100% real. And so if you're constantly having your phone ding, 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 not only does it drain the battery, it also drains you. So definitely it's a real phenomenon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so lots and lots of notifications, right? Your phone often probably looks something like this, lots of different alerts, lots of messages coming in. And so we get it, you're busy, we're busy, everyone's very, very busy trying to be productive within the world. And so how do all these notifications actually not interfere with work life that you're trying to create? All right, so we've talked a little bit so far about challenges. We've talked a little bit about a variety of different things. And now let's review our proposed mental model. I see that there's a hand up. I'm wondering if we're going to wait until the very end to answer questions, if that's okay, unless there's an immediate question that needs to be answered. But let's review the mental model. All right, so we talked about this. We talked about reputation at the institutional level, at the individual level. All really matters because it can ultimately funnel through social media, yes, into more impact that we can create, more funding opportunities that we can generate, and ultimately more opportunities for us to do the great work that we're doing. But there are also challenges in social media, right? So we talked about the 5 challenges that we need to overcome. And to address those 5 challenges, we've actually created this wonderful framework called the 5 rituals of social media for academics. And we're going to use the rest of the presentation today to walk you through what these 5 rituals actually include. So 5 rituals for social media for academics. Let's get started.
All right. So
Okay, so first one, number one. Number one is have one reason, at least a reason to be on social media. What do you have to do first, Teresa? I think there's something we have to ensure that people do before they engage on social media.
Yeah, I think that this is the why, right? We talked about it. Start with your why, have it as your touchstone, really bring it forth when you times get tough, but before you even do that, you have to exist.
You have to sign up.
Yes. You have to sign up.
Yeah, that's what I was going for. We have to sign up. So we have to go onto Twitter. We have to go onto LinkedIn. If you don't have a profile yet, create one. So log in, you're signing up, you're going to create your own Twitter handle. We have I guess little stories to go with this as well, Teresa. So I just put my name in there, and ML stands for my middle and last name. But why are you teaching MD?
Yeah, I mean, my brother sent me an email saying you might like this Twitter thing at some point, and I said okay, and so I signed up, and I just finished medical school, so definitely I put my MD in there. Yeah, so
yeah,
but you can put whatever you want, and yeah, there were other Teresa Chans already, so I just was like, okay, I guess I'll have this one. Mm-hmm.
Okay, very cool. So you got your Twitter handles. That's what your name is called, your Twitter handle. Then you establish yourself by putting a picture up there, creating a bit of a bio, and then you start to follow people. So you follow people to get updates on the news that they put out into the online universe. You get followers when people follow you back, or they find you and they find your work interesting and they decide to follow your updates. And then there's a lot of different functions that you can have on Twitter. So you have to study. I say study because there's lots of nuance to the social media world. And so you have to understand what a comment is, what a retweet is, what a like is, how to upload images, how to upload files. the @ handle, the hashtag handle, why that's important to be able to target your messaging and to be able to filter through all the information that's actually on the Twitterverse or on LinkedIn. What's this paper, Teresa? Do we have a
Yeah,
paper?
so if you want to see this paper, it's a one-pager. It's really nice. And it really just summarizes, and we're going to highlight a bunch of different parts of this paper throughout it. So if you want to read it, what you have to do is pick up your phone, open your phone app, okay? And then you're going to point it towards that little barcode in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, and a little pop-up, as you can see here, will pop up. And you can click that and it'll take you to the paper.
Okay.
We'll have a couple of these throughout the presentation. And again, if you have a question and you're raising your hand, just go ahead and type it in the Q&A. We'll try to answer it in real time.
Perfect.
All right.
Awesome. So I'm going to keep moving. Oh, and so we've gone onto Twitter. We've gone and created a profile. We have everything set up. Teresa, are we done yet? Is it good?
No, probably not. And if you want to scan the QR code, this is a paper that we actually published just last year, really about the idea that your digital identity is a distinct phenomenon from your personal identity or your professional identity. And so it's something for you to be very cognizant of, and you can actually meaningfully construct it. Just as much as your professional identity, you might be able to put things out there to explain what it is that you can do and who you want to be with your papers and other things like that. Similarly with social media, you have to put yourself back out there. So it's like you're an Olympic skier who's mastered that sport of putting your papers all out in the world, or being a nationally renowned educator. If you haven't been on Clubhouse before, then you may have to reestablish your brand and start from the bottom again. You'll probably go faster and further than other people, but at the very beginning, you might just have to find your sea legs. You might have to learn how to sail, which is a completely different skill set than skiing, right? So definitely, I think that this paper is some evidence to show that awkwardness you might feel, it's totally valid, and you can feel good that you can reconstruct things the way you want them to be.
Okay, awesome. So going back to the goals, so we've got everything set up. We've got our digital identity kind of like formulated somewhat in our minds. What are the goals that we're going after? Well, sample goals here are maybe building a network of like-minded professionals. So being able to follow more people, get others to follow you, build a community of people that you can share things with, that you can sort of collaborate with maybe in the future. Second goal that you could have, staying up to date with your field. A lot of the time there's lots of information being put out by organizations on social media. And so just following them enables you to actually get that information on an ongoing basis. It's like a personalized newsfeed. And then third goal could be knowledge translation. So you want to help others understand the work that you're doing, be it your collaborators or maybe patients or students. You really want to transfer that knowledge out there for it to be useful and understood by others. And so Twitter or LinkedIn or any kind of social media platform is actually a great way to do that, because it's a highly visual form of communication. All right, we've got second ritual here. So now we've got one reason, but now we've got two whys, at least, for why we're doing what we're doing, to ensure that our activities are aligning with the reason that we're on social media in the first place. Okay.
Yes, so I think that, I mean, it's perfect. Mark Walton has just asked, for Twitter, it can feel like shark-infested water sometimes. How do you handle this danger? And to me, I think it's about this. I think it's about exactly, it's like he was a plant or something. Thanks, Mark, for asking the perfect question. Because I think that what I will share, what I do not share, I think that's how I construct that safety, right? I stay on brand with medical education or research in medical education, usually. And I center myself with building a network like-minded professionals, not like an echo chamber, but people who love medical education. We may disagree as to how the value of quantitative, qualitative methods, for instance, but we all believe in advancing the academy and being able to do medical education work, right? So I follow people with those interests, and like I said, I try not to create an echo chamber, but I do try to find people who are, at least in their spirit of things, they may go about it differently. I try to interact with those. And then I think you can follow people to just stay up to date. And so this is with a lot of journals, I do that. And so I keep running a tab. And so I follow a lot of the meta journals. I'll show you a list in a little bit so you can see who I follow. And in terms of knowledge translation, well, I tweet out pictures about my papers, for instance, or infographics as they're called now. And that can be a way for me to share and to celebrate some of my trainees in my little lab of medical education research.
Cool. Okay, so we know what we will do and what we won't do, so it's on brand for the goals that we have. Now, what if you wanted to share your life pictures, Teresa? Is that okay? Can I share my picture by my bunny or something like that?
I think it depends on who you are and who you want your digital identity to be. So for myself, because I'm pretty secure in who I am, I'm pretty secure that most of my trainees, even in the emergency department, will know that I have a life outside of medicine, I hope. I do sometimes tweet about things that I do. So for instance, if I go with a bunch of my friends in the time before, it would have been like, an escape room, although that's not something that we could do at this time. We tweeted when a bunch of us I went to an escape room and conquered it. However, we also then tweeted after that that maybe we thought about the simulation applications of it. So that was definitely on brand after that.
Didn't you write a paper after that too?
Yes. That came out of that same experience. So it's funny, right? Sometimes these conversations they do spin into other things, and for me, that's part of my brand, is that I am definitely a little nerdier than most.
All good. So, okay, so everything can actually converge on the social media. That's good, because I think that's a common question that's asked. Okay, so third ritual. So we got a goal, we got the whys. Now we need examples. We all know how mentoring is really important, how role modeling is so important. So now it's time to identify at least, let's say, 3 individuals that you can point to and say, I want to actually use social media like you do. Yeah. So let's look at some examples. Okay, so these are some familiar faces, and maybe actually all of them should be familiar faces. So Harriet, do you want to speak about what Harriet does on social media, Teresa?
Yeah, I mean, Harriet's, as you can see, she's been online since 2017 in September, and she's a rock star scientist. Like, she does lots of cool cardiology stuff, nice. And she is a very activist and involved with her national societies, and so she, she always reminds me, for instance, when I should be wearing red on a day. I mean, I like red and I wear every day sometimes, but she reminds me that I should support the Heart and Stroke Foundation and raise awareness of women who sometimes are underdiagnosed with regards to MIs and other cardiac disease. So I definitely thank Harriet for her leadership in this area.
Awesome. So Harriet retweets a lot, shares a lot of very fascinating content. Sean Mondu, so he's a fellow faculty member in emergency medicine. And what Sean really enjoys to do is actually engage with the audience on Twitter through conversation. So there's a lot of tweets that he sends out to just ask questions, see what people are thinking about it. He shares different things that he's looking into. And so what's on the screen here is an example of how he's engaged with people to talk about the area of strategic foresight. And he was learning about it, he was sharing about it as he went. And so that was a fascinating thing to watch and engage with him on social media. And the last one that we want to highlight on this slide, Dr. Jennifer Kwan. Teresa, can you tell us the story of how Dr. Kwan has built up an identity over the last few months?
Yeah, so Dr. Kwan got on Twitter to start putting these graphs out. She actually wasn't really big on Twitter before that, and she basically wanted to analyze the daily work that was coming out of the ministry to get the numbers for COVID. And so she actually created a Twitter account. She did get hacked recently, but she originally joined in this account in 2020 of March of 2020, and so she created this. If you search her right now, she unfortunately got hacked recently because she's so high profile that someone actually hacked her Twitter account. Similarly, that can happen. It happened to one of our institutional accounts recently as well. And so it's all the more reason when you're doing social media to make sure you use 2-factor authentication.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So awesome stuff. And she updated every single day. So consistency and having a clear value proposition, right? That's really what sings to people when it comes to social media. All right, more very local names here. So fabulous celebrities on Twitter, Jonathan Charbonneau and Brian Coombs. So Jonathan actually shares a lot of personal projects that he has on Twitter. And I say personal projects because I think this is one that he's extraordinarily passionate about. But of course, it links in with the professional life as well. Key Lime podcasts. So whenever there's a new podcast that's shared or available, he posts about it on social media, usually around midnight or 1 a.m. But we all do work at different times of the day. I think ever since I'm up there, I actually do see it as it's being posted. But great to kind of follow folks like Dr. Charbonneau just to get that insight as things are being released. And what does Dr. Brian Coombs do, Teresa?
Yeah, Dr. Brian Coombs is an excellent researcher who's around in our parts, and I just think he does a really good job on Twitter at highlighting papers that he thinks have done a great job. So this is an example of one of the papers that he's tweeted about, and he's endorsed it as a cool paper. And I really don't know necessarily what that picture is about, but I might be enticed to do that. So yeah. And so as you can see there, that whole picture and the little bar, that's like a whole clickable item. So he's done a really good job, and so has the journal. PNAS is a big journal. They've optimized themselves for social media so that anytime you tweet a link with a paper, it'll show up and be nice and big like that, just like the Key Lime podcast link showed up real big.
Very nice, very nice. Okay, awesome. So 2 more great people to follow. Now, just on this slide, we have a little bit of information about infographics because we did mention that social media, so Twitter, LinkedIn, highly visual platforms for communication. And so what is effective on highly visual platforms for communication is not long blogs of text. And you've probably heard jokes about 140 character limit or whatever the limit is now for Twitter. But that is because Twitter is more effective, LinkedIn is more effective as a visual forum. And so these are some examples of how knowledge is translated into visuals to be able to pass along the message much more quickly, and as we'll learn later on, much more effectively as well for memory retention.
Yeah.
All right, fourth ritual now. So we've got the reason, we've got the whys, we've got references now of who we should follow, who we should emulate based on our interests, right? So don't always just go for, I don't know, the Elon Musks of the world, or those like really big names that have their own very unique styles on social media. Look for people that relate to you, that are in your field, that you kind of find that you, for some reason, are attracted to how they use social media, and emulate them. They're great role models, great examples for you to follow. Fourth thing here, so now outcomes. Remember, we want to make sure that this is all linked to our professional identity. This is all linked to productivity. So how do we actually do that? We link it to outcomes. What outcomes do we want to link it to, Teresa?
Yeah, so in terms of the outcomes that we can look at is, I think it has to link to your goals first off. And then I think that to me, it's about the outcomes, maybe new contacts you've established, how you grow your network. You can see about how you might get invited to do talks. I definitely have. I was recently invited to speak in Thailand, I believe, through a DM, and it's a legit conference.
Wow.
It's obviously just to speak on social media and medical education and stuff like that because of a tweet thread that I had tweeted about a talk. Another thing would be that you can foster collaborations. I actually have a whole paper that I actually wrote because of a Twitter conversation. It started there, moved to a Google Doc, then we had a Skype, and then boom,
nice.
we had a paper. So one of my top cited papers. And the last one would be talent sporting. And to me, that's how Dr. Yusuf Yilmaz found me. He had followed me on Twitter for a little while. And he came around to ask me by email. And he kind of fanboyed me, I guess, and said, I've been following you on Twitter. I think you're the person that I want to work with for my postdoc. And then we went from there. So it was pretty amazing.
It's such a great story. And such a great story. Okay. Awesome. So we've got the outcomes. We're going to link them to our professional identity. And so we're going to be able to demonstrate productivity. Okay. So finding your community. Teresa, do you want to kind of touch on this one?
Yeah, I mean, when you get started, because I think that there's some questions about people who aren't sure about how to interact online. And you know what? Part of it is that you need to figure out who you're going to act with, who you're going to surround yourself with. There are lots of trolls out there, but you know who's really safe to interact with is the journals. Definitely the institutional accounts like journals or, you know, Mac Health Sci or Mac Department of Medicine or Mac Emerge, for instance, they're probably going to be safer, right? Because they're representing an entire organization. So I found when I first get started on Twitter, it was really safe to just follow a pile of journals. And guess what? That also cut down a bunch of different things. And then you can figure out who they follow, because journalists are following certain people, usually people on the editorial board. And again, those are people that are usually pretty safe because they're usually academics because they're volunteering their time to be on a journal editorial board. So for sure, it's something for you to kind of use these as your filter. And there'll probably be people who are big in your field already, because otherwise they wouldn't be in like the journals that you read. They wouldn't be running the journals that you read. So I do find that was a great way for me to find some of the people.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's really, really awesome. And I think that's such an easy way also just to build up your list of people that you're following and people who hopefully follow you in return. So thank you for that, Teresa. What about learners? So can you engage with learners on Twitter? Can you engage with them on LinkedIn? Of course you can. And so you can seek a little bit of education into this fun area of social media, this highly interactive area of social media. And so how do you do this? Well, several different ways within the medical education space. Again, the same visual that we talked about, the same one pager that we talked about a few slides ago. But we can use Twitter by kind of using it for maybe explicitly a timeout. So maybe let's take a moment here and look up different pieces that are on social media about a particular topic that we're discussing. Maybe it is just during break time, people engage with one another on social media. Maybe you're doing what is it, Teresa, a tweetorial?
Yeah, I mean, tweetorials are real. They've been written about in the New England Journal of Medicine. There's Tony Breuer has actually written a whole article about tweetorials and how they're mainstream.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so tweetorials are a thing. So tweeting in sequence to be able to teach people about different topics. Maybe you can ask a question. So that's what Dr. Sean Mondu does, right? So you go out to Twitter, you ask a question, and lo and behold, the Twitterverse or the LinkedIn universe answers. And so you've got a community there, right? And so do what you would do with a community and talk to them, ask a question, chat about things. And with your learners, you can do the same thing. I've seen instructors go and post questions out there too, and students need to respond. Or I've seen also learners needing to engage their instructors on Twitter so that the questions are visible to everyone else. And so that communication tool is seen as something where you can have conversations. It's not just a one-way posting medium. And ultimately, you can also just create that safe space also. So the digital world can be your social world, especially these days during virtual education. And so use it as such. Sorry, Teresa, do you want to add something?
I'm just gonna add, because one of the questions that Dr. Holbrook has just asked is about exactly that, right? How do you create that safe space, right? How do you know, like academia is usually a polite society. Social media is very daunting. There's trolling, there's racist, homophobic, misogynistic, and rapidly misinforming comments. You know, what strategies do you use to immunize yourself from this? And to be honest, like, I mean, just like Mark Crowther just asked at the beginning of the day, I don't think our job is to immunize ourselves against this, although that's important to kind of have some strategies such as blocking people or reporting people who are abusive. But part of our job as clinicians who do social media will be to help protect others. And so it's about positioning yourself to create that safe space. You have to actively create a safe space and amplify other people and watch out for them. And text someone if you think that they're showing signs of distress, for instance. I think that's part of the reach. There was once a medical student who tweeted a picture of their house on fire. And I saw it on Twitter. I reached out to see if they're okay, but I also reached out to, Dr. White, who was the associate dean at the time, and said, hey, did you know this was happening? He was like, no. So he reached out to make sure that he was supported, right? So sometimes it's about creating that virtual space. Maybe it's just the real space around you. And I think you can actually do that by combating misinformation, by correcting things, and being a salient voice out there. I think the world needs more people like the awesome Dr. Holbrook to get out there and be tweeting.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing that story. Okay, so there's a modified Bloom's taxonomy for social media. Do you want to quickly touch on this, Teresa?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, Bloom's taxonomy just is talking about like higher order and lower order activities that you might do. And so in a modified version of this for social media is that at the beginning, you might just be a lurker. You're just going to consume, you're going to see what other people are reading. And while you're consuming, you're probably observing too, just like you do it when you're a new medical student on a brand new ward, and you're like, like you've got eyes the size of saucers and you're just observing what everything's going on. You're taking it all in. It could be like that first awkward day you walked into a lab where everyone's pipetting and having a great time doing their sciencey work, and you're like, what is science? Definitely at the beginning, you're going to feel that awkwardness. You're going to need to feel like you need to just watch and see what's going on. Next is you can promote. Maybe you tweet and retweet other people's stuff. Maybe it's just putting some of your own personal achievements, maybe your program achievements out there. Then it's going to be about discussing, and maybe this is where you can just start gently having that dialogue between people participating or debating and discussing, quant versus qual research in medical education, for instance, or something like that for me. And then at the end, it might be that you'll create new ideas, social movements, collaborations. You might create content at a bigger scale, kind of like what Jonathan's done with Keyline Podcast, or like we're doing with the Mac PFD podcast.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so we got this. Now let's move on to, is there evidence that infographics actually increase readership? Seems like there is. Do you want to touch on this very quickly, Teresa?
Yeah, so I thought I'd bring this one up as an example of that creation that you might want to engage in. A lot of us are identified somewhat as scholars or scientists, and at the very least, you might be a teacher who could teach other people science. And so we know that a lot of people have trouble, figuring out what to read, and getting some of that attention that we talked about earlier on is going to be about creating really visually stimulating graphics, as you can see, based on some of the tweets we've already shown. And so from that point of view, we did a randomized controlled trial to see if we had 43 original research articles. We randomized into two arms, roughly of 24 articles. And then we actually had the infographic group have a bunch of junior editors create some graphics for those articles, and then a control group where we basically did a text only version of it, like the front page of the journal article. And then we compared abstract views, full text views, and altmetric scores for both groups. And
nice.
As you can see here, the full text views were they weren't significantly different. We think that's because it's a combination of us being underpowered, but also the fact that there was a paywall, so the full text views couldn't actually be reached if you click through. You had to actually log into your library, and we all know once you have to log in. And so I think very much like the University of Saskatchewan colleagues, Brent Homa and others who have been very supportive of this kind of work, and they've done such great work in this area.
Yeah, so interesting how a simple switch to visual communication can yield much greater views, at least, and that could very well translate into bigger impact of the work that you're doing. All right, so we got four different rituals that we've talked about so far. And now let's wrap it all up with the fifth one. So the fifth ritual, after we've set our goals, we've reflected on why we do certain things on social media, we've got our reference points, we've got our reporting of outcomes, and we got 5 reactions. So goal, only 5 reactions to things on social media during the week. Only 5 methods of engagement. And so how do you engage on social media? Well, I think it's important for you to understand the nuances of the different platforms. So what time of day is sometimes important? What kind of information? How visual? How text heavy is it? All somewhat important. Do we want to consider for a department account or for a university account sharing the responsibility of promoting that Twitter handle. And so a lot of the time we ask you to tag the people that were involved, to be able to associate things with certain key terms. It's all for the purpose of building brand collectively, not just individually. You should probably be using a little bit of variety. Variety is the spice of life. It's also the spice of social media, if you will. And so sharing different forms of content in the form of links to publications, in the form of infographics, in the form of videos, in the form of engaging with others. So not just pushing out information, but also being able to share and curate things for your followership. And so just varying all of that, using everything that is increasingly evidence-based. As Teresa has mentioned, people do publish about this kind of work, what works, what doesn't work. And so you can definitely take a lead from not just your role models, but also the things that have been published on this topic. What are the pitfalls, Teresa, of social media?
Yeah, I think the pitfalls are there's numerous, but I think that here's some pitfalls. It's avoidance strategies. So number one is be rigorous and critical when using the social media resources. So definitely you need to talk about critical appraisal. A big part of my research career so far has been to develop scoring tools and rubrics to help you discuss with learners about what is important and what's not, and how do you critically appraise something. So definitely check it out. You can find me on Google Scholar, which is another scholarly kind of social media. And I think that you have to be wary about broadcasting yourself. Obviously, you can alienate people if you're just only bragging all over the place. So definitely think about how you want to message yourself. It might be some graceful self-promotion when you do publish a paper. Maybe it's about thanking your colleagues who have done a great job, especially if the more senior you are. Maybe it's about making sure your lab is very visible. So tweeting about others, and along the way, your name might be on that paper is true. And then there's also the fact that you just have to consider the e-professionalism. Now, I know that Sunil Yapati had asked, is there value in having a professional versus personal account? I would say that in that way, it's hard to keep those things divided, but at the same time, I think you do have to try to think about how you can bring a sense of decorum to the online space, and have a center of who you want to emit to the world, and how you want to represent yourself to that world. And I think that professionalism, I think if you're a member of a profession, is of course really important because of our licensing bodies now paying attention to social media. But on the flip side, I think it's just a good thing to be a good role model to other people, right? So if you wouldn't say it in a busy hallway or the elevator, you probably shouldn't be tweeting it, right? And then on the flip side, thinking about patient confidentiality as well, for the same rule, the elevator rule is what one of my colleagues calls it. If you wouldn't say it in a crowded elevator, which doesn't really exist anymore, but like, you know, if you're not going to say it there, then you should not tweet it. It's a good filter.
Perfect. And of course, there's a paper on this, or there's a guide. So just use that QR code and access that for the good practices and pitfalls to avoid. So last topic, this is really important because I think this is a reason why a lot of folks don't use social media. And of course, there's so many benefits that we've described to you. So how could you possibly not want to use it at least, or try it out? And so one of the big reasons why I, for example, don't have things on my phone is because I don't want to get distracted. There's so many notifications that go through social media. So how do you avoid those notifications? Well, you can keep it off your phone. So much similar to what I do, or you can make adjustments, right? And so those adjustments could include curating who you follow. So only go and follow those who provide you with useful information that is relevant to you for one reason or another. Adjust your notification settings, certain hours of the day even. So you can go into your settings, you can adjust so that only during the work hours or during 9 to 12, for example, you get notifications of things that are coming through. So you can do that either through the social media platform itself or through your phone. And then you can also just turn off notifications. Teresa, that's what you do, right? You just turn off notifications?
Yeah, it changed my life. I'll be honest with you. I did that for email too. And now the way that I do it is that I get to control my life again. I get to hold things down rather than try to do it for everyone.
So important.
Yeah.
So important.
I mean, the only thing that gets through is WhatsApp from certain people and text messaging.
Exactly. Really important to be able to control your social media and your digital presence, but also the number of distractions that you get throughout the day. Make sure that the distractions are contributing to the productivity that you want to accomplish. Okay, so if you want more information about this or other topics, Teresa's going to quickly go over some of the things that are available for the Master Program for Faculty Development.
Yeah, so very quickly, we have a lot of different social media platforms. You can go to the next slide, Sarah. And you can check out our event calendar, which is at the top bar there, and it's hidden under the black spot in the website, but you can definitely check out what events we have, and you can go to the next slide, Sarah. There's lots of different events. Some of them will have been about social media. And the best part is that if you go to the next slide, we also have a recorded video archive and a YouTube channel where all of this stuff is housed. So if you missed a session on social media, you can watch it now on YouTube and you can take a look there. We also have a direct email blast and a podcast, which is the next slide. And the best thing is that in order to make this all happen during the COVID pandemic, we actually engaged a virtual community practice. So we use Slack because it was before Microsoft Teams became a thing for our campus, but you could use Microsoft Teams as well. And our team actually came together at the height of the pandemic and made like 50 things in like a week and a half or something. That it was a whirlwind, but it was because we were connected. So if you don't have a digital hangout where you can connect with your staff and faculty, and you might want to think about it. So whether it's Microsoft Teams or something else.
Yeah. So important. Okay, so wrapping it all up, you've got your 5 virtuals now. So having a reason, having whys, having 3 reference individuals, reporting on 4 outcomes, and having 5 reactions. So hopefully this is helpful just to kind of make social media more realistic for you. And if there are any questions, and I know there are, I'm going to welcome those questions now. But thank you so much for your attention this morning. I know it's early, and I know that you all have very busy lives. So appreciate you coming out and joining us for this session.
Thanks, guys. That's great and a really comprehensive review. I'm going to take chair's prerogative and ask 2 questions at the start. So I just wanted to highlight Ann Holbrook's question. So for people who are kind of under some arbitrary age that I could define, which would make me seem either young or old to some people, this is totally foreign, and we didn't grow up in an environment where this was part of what we did. And I would say that most of the people who are above a certain age bracket or something like don't see this as important. And yet it is important. And I think one of the messages that we need to convey is that in reality, this is how younger, maybe not younger in age, but some kind of demographic now communicates, and it's going to become more important in all kinds of things. So for example, in tenure and promotion, we're starting to figure out how impact from social media use may impact tenure and promotion. It's not really a question, but maybe Teresa or Sarah, if you have a comment about that, because you can't hide from this, I guess, is my message.
Yeah, and the thing is I don't think we should, as educators, as scholars, right? Like we need the awesomeness of Anne and yourself to be on social media because you have something to say, even if it's a little bit at a time. Because I mean, I usually, when I do development work in workshops, I kind of say, look, if we don't get on social media, then the Jenny McCarthy's of the world and Gwyneth Paltrow's of the world, they're the only voice that are out there. And so are we all just going to be putting jade eggs in funny places? And, you know, if it wasn't for Jennifer Gunther, who has done a lot of advocacy work about, you know, educating people about their bodies, specifically women, she's an obstetrician and gynecologist. And so, you know, she's done a really great job. Like she just won a big alumni award at Western University, which is where I went for med school. And she's single-handedly taking on some of the mistruths. And I think that not everyone needs to do that, but I do think that it's probably a very important role within the academy. It's why we work so hard to put a section of it in our AFP spreadsheet. Right. And
just again, second chair question is it's a statement and a question together. So someone's asked a question in the chat function rather than the question and answer box. And it's about what do you do with aggressive followers? Well, it's the same as what you do with notifications. In my opinion, you know, if they're really not adding value to the discussion, just turn them off. It's just going to cause you anxiety. You're not going to accomplish anything. One of the things, they disappear, and that will also, you know, modify their behavior because they realize they've lost one of their audiences. But with notifications, one of our faculty members has his phone bleep every single time he gets an email. And I think that's partly because it makes him feel important when he's in a meeting and his phone's bleep. It makes the rest of us think that we want to drive a hammer through the darn thing.
Yeah.
I get hundreds of emails a day and lots of other communications. And it's important for you to learn, if you're going to be in this domain, to learn how to control notifications, because it really does affect your psychic status. All my notifications are turned off except for critical family members and a few other individuals. I found this morning that Teresa, for example, has my WhatsApp notification turned off because I tried to get a hold of her and it didn't go off. So that's really important. It does not impress anybody if your phone goes ping every single time you get a message from somebody.
Yeah. In terms of actually, my phone was in the other room, Mark. That's really what it was, because I was getting ready for this. And but I mean, I think there are a couple of things here. So, for instance, a quick and easy question to answer is Heather has asked, "What's a great infographic program?" Well, I like PictoChart. It has a freemium version, so you can start with the free. The premium version for the educators, so if you register through McMaster, it's only $35 for the whole year. That's USD, so it might feel a little bit heavy, but it's about $50 all in for the whole year, which I think is worth it if that's something that you like making. And there's we do have a recorded webinar on infographic and visual abstracts, so you can take a look at that. There's Mark Walton asked about the consumption of social media and real world versus virtual world. To be honest, right now, those two things blur. I mean, with movements like Black Lives Matters, you could argue the Arab Spring back, closer to the earlier part of this decade or last decade, the whole idea of the pandemic being something where we're all kind of turning online to live. Social media has become a very inextricable part. I think that's why people are being a little bit more activist and engaged on social media. And I think that this is why we've got a little team from McMaster Program for Faculty Development working on educating people about that.
Can I address the regulatory question?
Yeah.
Yeah, so someone's asked a question about how do you social media in a regulated professional. I would say two things. One is, the crowded elevator. For those of you who are old enough to remember what that was, it's a really important thing. So don't say something on social media ever, underline capital 48-point Arial bold, that you wouldn't say in a crowded elevator at a loud voice. That's the first thing, assuming you're appropriately frontal lobe. And the second thing is, people have been disciplined in the Department of Medicine at McMaster University for things they have put on social media. And it will go all the way to the committee at the CPSO that controls your license. So just always be aware that you are talking in a loud voice on an elevator. Nothing is hidden on social media ever. So you are, if you say or do something dumb, you are endangering your license to practice medicine in the province of Ontario if you say or do something inappropriate. You will have seen recently in the news a physician in Ontario who's been disciplined because of an anti-vaccine stance that she has, for example.
I mean, social media is you, but amplified. That's all. So if you got to just have that filter for yourself, right?
Okay, it is 9 o'clock, so we should probably end there. I'd like to thank Sarrah and Teresa for a really great and engaging set of rounds, and something that I think we need to all be aware of, even if we have trouble dipping our toes into that water. Teresa has been a world leader in this, and as you saw, is not only just participating in the environment, but also doing real high quality research into the impact of this. And we have a number of other people, including Jonathan Charbonneau, who was mentioned, who's doing that as well. And I think Sarah's been a really important member of the department in trying to amplify some of these messages and build a really strong community around social media in the department. We'll have medical grand rounds from the chair's office again in a month or so. We have 2 more for this year. Just a reminder about the vaccine again, if you look back to your email from Monday, you'll find something about vaccinators. We need vaccinators. It's an urgent need to get more vaccine into people in Ontario. And we will be presenting this on our YouTube channel, and Teresa, I'm sure, will be broadcasting it through her channels as well. So for those who missed one slide or a QR code, you'll have a resource later to look back at. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a great day, and thanks to Teresa and Sarrah for a great round. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.